Thank you for the lovely introduction. I was going to introduce myself all over again, but I have nothing further to say after that other than it is really great to be here in Atlanta. We've come all the way from London, and ironically, it is the biggest heat wave the UK has ever seen, while the weather here has been terrible. So it's like we brought a black cloud with us, so we're sorry about that. But I'm Rebecca, and it's lovely to be here.
And I'm Claire, and I'm a copywriter, and I really love my job, and I'm not scared about AI taking it. We can talk more about that later.
Strong start. So we are from Action Rocket, which is an independent agency based in London, and we're on a mission to make CRM more creative so that you love what you send. And today we are going to talk about what really happens when you orchestrate conversations at scale. During this session, we are going to hopefully equip you with the knowledge and tools to do three things. Firstly, to see your CRM channels as behavioural tools. Secondly, to realise the potential of having RCS in the mix. And lastly, to help understand the opportunity of conversation across channels. So, quick show of hands. Who here wakes up really genuinely excited to receive broadcast emails from brands? Woohoo! None of us. And that is correct. The uncomfortable truth is people simply do not wake up excited to engage with CRM. No one in the world is lying in bed thinking, God, I hope today's the day I finally get that beautifully crafted lifecycle email.
But I wrote it.
But the thing is, the more friction there is in the journey, whether that is about anything vaguely unexciting or a bit nerve-wracking, whether that's finance, health, tax, anything vaguely stressful, the worse it gets. We delay, we avoid, we drop off. And that's really important because usually this isn't a channel problem. It is a behavioural problem. And because we know people are overwhelmed, the industry's response has largely been to treat channels themselves as the problem. There is a belief in our industry that too many channels equals too much noise. We worry about fatigue, we worry about overlap, and we worry about annoying our customers. So what do? We pull back, we send less, we hesitate. Or, and a few of us in the room will be completely familiar with this, we do the complete opposite and we just shout louder to fight for attention. But here's the thing. The reality is that more channels don't create noise. Noise is what happens when messages aren't valuable or helpful to the user. Badly designed interactions. So let's zoom out for a moment. When someone drops off a journey, it's rarely random. What's usually happening is behavioural friction. People procrastinate because the reward feels too far away. And actually, I think it was Piers Steele, the behavioural science professor, that said around 95% of people procrastinate to some degree. 95% of people, that's almost everyone, and we're all out here just doing whatever else we want to do instead of the thing we need to. Secondly, we have a fear of getting it wrong. We hesitate because we're worried about making the wrong decision. The next is confusion about what to do next. We get stuck because there are too many choices. If you've ever had the pleasure of being on a dating app, you'll know exactly about this issue. And if you've been ghosted, it's likely because people are stuck because there's too many choices. And I'm sorry for triggering anyone. The last is our friend cognitive overload. So we drop off because we've asked people's brains to process too much at once, and they've decided to just duck out of the whole experience. The key is that most of the time, people aren't ignoring us because they don't care. They're not acting because the experience feels mentally heavy. Behavioural science tells us that we naturally move towards what feels easiest, clearest, and safest in the moment. The easier something feels, the more likely people are to do it. So when someone doesn't act, it's usually not because they don't see the message. It's because the message did not remove the friction. And that requires a real rethink in how we see channels and how we use our channels. So here's the shift. Channels are not media. They are behavioural tools. And each one should remove a different type of friction. Because if every channel is doing the exact same thing, what we're doing is not orchestrating behaviour. We are just broadcasting in surround sound. And once you start thinking this way, the role of each channel becomes much, much clearer. Email is for depth and explanation, and of course these definitions will flex depending on your exact product or brand and audience, but as a typical rule of thumb, email is for depth and explanation, push provides timely interruption, SMS gives urgency and visibility, and RCS, which we'll touch more on in a minute, is for customer-led interaction and guided action. Each of these channels has its own job, not based on our preference or what's easiest to build for us, unfortunately, but based on the behavioural barrier, the customer barrier that we are solving for. So we're going to think about the customer journey now. So imagine your journey from awareness to starting, to continuing, to completion and purchase. Most brands design this like a series of campaigns in silo. But this is not a campaign, it is a system. So think of it as a system. And systems do one of two things. They either reduce friction or they amplify it. So think about the systems that you work with. Are they reducing that friction or are they adding to it? Right now, the entire system is under pressure. We love email, we love it, we're all here for it. It's great for information, but it's also a lot less instant than some other channels and can be a bit more cognitively heavy. We're also up against challenges in the wider landscape. We know the inbox is changing, AI is summarizing, it's filtering, and it's deciding what gets attention before a human has even seen it. So in that case, the question becomes, if your message doesn't make it through, where else can and where else does that conversation happen? Because we all know this, in spite of the threats that email's dead for the past 20 years, we know email isn't going away. It's just that it's no longer the only place that behavior gets shaped. So this is where RCS comes into the mix. Just a quick show of hands. Is everyone familiar with what RCS is? Have you used it before? Great, so a few of you have, awesome. But just to level set, Rich Communication Services is what RCS stands for. And what it does is it allows us to send messages with images, buttons, carousels, and real-time updates, all within the native messaging app. And unlike SMS, RCS feels much more like a conversation and less like a one-way alert. And also, if you're thinking, isn't this just fancy SMS? No, it's where messaging moves from telling to guiding to doing. With RCS, and I totally realize I sound like a salesperson for RCS, but I promise I'm not affiliated. I'm just really passionate about this as a channel. With RCS, you get interactive choices, embedded actions, reduced decision effort, and really clear next steps. All of that is incredible, it's great, but the real shift is that it reduces thinking. And if we remember one thing from behavioral science, it's that the easier something feels, the more likely people are to do it. The easier something feels, the more likely we are to do it. So let's just make this real with a real-life example from TurboTax. The user will start a journey and they drop off. Email here sets up the story. SMS comes in to surface the urgency. Push gives a timely nudge into the product. And RCS helps them actually complete the step. It's the same user, same goal, different roles, channels working beautifully together in concert. So now let's go a little bit deeper. If RCS is an interface, then messaging isn't just written, it becomes designed. And that's where this gets really interesting. The prime opportunity with RCS itself as a channel is the interaction. And I'm going to hand over to Claire to talk us through that a bit more.
That's right. So I think RCS can be seen as just another channel for marketers to get either excited or stressed about of a place where they need to be reaching their audience. It is another channel, but there's a real opportunity here, as Rebecca said, of how we use it. So it's not just a broadcast channel. We can embrace it as a place where we can have two-way interactions with customers. I think if we think about the way that we communicate with each other and how that's changed over the years, we used to write letters to each other, then we were on the phone. There was a time and a space where we were actually sending more personal emails to each other back and forward. And actually, we've moved more to messaging apps and having conversations there. So it makes sense for brands' communications to follow that trajectory too, especially if all we want is for those interactions to feel personal and forge some kind of connection. So as it's two-way conversation, it shifts from copywriting to conversation design. So as copywriters, we're taught that we should write as if we're having a direct conversation with our consumers, and now we actually are. It might take a while for this kind of to be embedded in the conversation design principles to be embedded into RCS if you adopt it as a channel. But just to say, there's a wealth of knowledge out there that you can draw from. So there are conversation designers who have been creating successful chatbots, voice experiences, interactive voice responses, so understanding that two-way conversation. I'm not going to go into that in too much detail now, but if you would like some recommendations of useful resources in that space, do grab me after the talk. So we're going to go into the principles of good conversation. So there are three here. So active listening, mutual respect, and true understanding. It's these three things that help nurture long-term relationships between brands and customers, the same they do when we're connecting in real world, person to person. So let's start with active listening. So really listen and show you've heard them. So you're at a conference, you're networking, you're seeing this play out in real time. If someone remembers your name, plays back something you've said, shows that they're interested in what you have to say and not just waiting for their turn to speak, it does feel like a more meaningful connection. You're both getting something from that conversation. I've seen some beautiful examples of that already with the people I've met here. The second, mutual respect. So treat your customer as an individual and not the mass audience. So I think there's been a bit of a trend recently, and I think it comes from like influencer marketing where they're talking to camera and hey guys, like addressing their whole audience. But it's really important when you're designing conversations or talking to your consumer wherever that it is one person reading that message, and it's how does it land for them. So talk to them as an individual and how you can help them.
Excuse me.
Okay. And the third is true understanding. So we really need to understand where our customers are coming from. How are they showing up to that conversation? It's empathy, it's caring about their needs and how we can solve that problem. We heard before lunch about how AI doesn't have empathy. So a bit of a side note, but I tell you who does know how to have empathy, your copywriters. So love them, trust them. They are best practiced in how to take that human insight from the strategy team and really make that land with your audience. So these are a good starting point for how we should write for or think about writing for RCS or any kind of messaging channel, but really it's how we should be talking to our audiences everywhere. Before putting any message out, when it comes to RCS or any chat channel, just take a second to think about the two sides of the conversation. So with the brand, you want to define your voice. This is goes further than your tone of voice guidelines and your style guide. We know already that they're hard to get everyone to follow anyway, but they're important because you want everyone talking in the same voice, whatever the platform. But when you come to a two-way interaction space, you also need to think about how your brand behaves. So, for example, what if the interaction is user-led and they bring something to the conversation that is kind of off the script that you've written for? Something wild, something rude, who knows? How are you as a brand decide up front how you're going to handle those situations? Because as with the tone of voice guidelines and style guide, it's the consistency of behaviour over time that builds trust. So you understand how you are and how you're talking and how you're going to behave. Take a minute to think about the customer and decide their action. So making sure that you understand what you want them to do, not only from your business objectives, you're all going to have those and something that you need them to do, but what is the thing that they need to do and is going to help them, and how do you guide them there? It is really important just to think about those before you start flooding the messages out there. As Rebecca said earlier, this is where writing becomes designing. So you've got the consistency down, but now it's about every message guiding to action, and it's how we overcome those barriers that Rebecca took us through earlier. So to overcome procrastination, we need to give reasons to act. So lead with the benefits to the user, make it timely, and explain why they should take that action today. To overcome the fear of getting it wrong, we need to provide reassurance. So minimize risks and speak to their truth. What I mean by that is that point about understanding where they're coming from when they come to the conversation and how you can ease that. And get emotional, like what is going to resonate with them the most. Make sure you're bringing that to the conversation too. To overcome confusion about what to do next, we should narrow the choice. So minimize the options and create a logical path, always ending on the action that they need to take. To overcome cognitive overload, let's create clarity. So be precise. Present the ideas in order and then remove any jargon, slang, or shorthand that might get in the way of your user understanding exactly what you want them to do. So I've put together an example here of taking a one-way communication and translating it into a two-way conversation. So this is actually an email from Action Rocket, a behind-the-screens email that we send to our clients and potential clients to let them know what we're up to. As Rebecca said earlier, this, like when in email, you've got a little bit more room to play. Let's not write essays there, but there is a bit more space for information. So the first job when translating that to RCS, or a conversational space, is it needs to be cut down. And not only in length, but also you need to know when to kill your darlings. In the email, we had like this loose concept of a countdown and launch of the Action Rocket new website, and that doesn't translate that well to the two-way conversation. So what we've done is edited and adapted it to fit in that space. And you can see here how we have given reasons to act, we've provided reassurance, we've narrowed the choice and created clarity.
So all of this is all well and good, but what are the results? We've tried this with some of our clients as well as on our own channels. And what's really exciting about getting orchestration right is the results. So we have seen, some of our clients have seen 10% of CRM attributed conversions, 10% of all CRM conversions with just 2% of sends. And that is across all CRM activity within 4 days of an RCS send. It's also outperformed channels like for like, campaigns-wise, with SMS and email, consistently across multiple audiences, even those who are disengaged. We've also seen reduced drop-offs at key moments in the journey by using RCS as that confidence layer. And also, we have now built a proven, repeatable model, now adopted as the blueprint for future campaigns. So it really works. And all of this, not because we sent more, but because we designed better. So if we zoom out again, we know that cross-channel conversations are the future, and we know that everything is going down a one-to-one level. With that said, we know that now with RCS, messaging becomes more of a product surface. So we know that people don't just read, they're going to be able to act, which means that we are going to be creating guided journeys in the moment. No redirects, because you can do everything inside the message, so that removes the friction of having layer upon layer of landing page, which I'm sure we're all really excited about. And once you start thinking about the channels like that, everything begins to blur into one. All of these channels begin to blur into one conversation that unfolds over time, which I think is really beautiful.
So to leave you with some simple steps on how to orchestrate the conversation, just summing up a little bit what we've gone through. First of all, identify the behavioural barrier. So what is getting in the way of the action being taken? Then it's assigning the right channel role. So looking at the channel mix and how can they overcome friction with information, timing, attention, interaction, etc. Think of them as the whole. Then design the interaction, not just the message. So that point about taking that step back, thinking about the two parts of the conversation and the wants and needs and the role each play. And then sequence the moments to reduce friction. So taking that interaction, but zooming back and looking at the conversation as a whole and how it all works together. So our key takeaways: design for behaviour, not channels. Remove the friction or nothing moves.
Then you want to orchestrate systems rather than campaigns. You need to make sure that each channel has its job and you're thinking of that job.
And then, of course, shifting from broadcast to interaction, guide the action in the moment. And there is one action we would like you to take today.
So that QR code gives you a link to subscribe to our Action Rocket newsletters. We promise we never spam. We always send a variety of industry-related news, and we also use our emails as a space to code, a playground for coding. So we're trying out new techniques, so they're definitely worthwhile. I think we have time for questions. Do we have time? Is that right? Anyone got any questions?
Is this one working? Yes. Yeah. Any questions?
Oh,
Let me pass
no,
over.
we've got one.
Oh, nice.
From your experience when using RCS, do you have customers like opt into RCS messaging like specifically, or is that something where if they're opt into marketing in general, you just send email, SMS, and RCS as well?
Yeah, most of our clients, it depends, but mostly people are opted into marketing messages, and if their carrier supports RCS and they are also opted into marketing, they will get RCS messages. No worries.
Awesome. Any other questions?
I think there's one.
Sorry, I was just turning the mic down.
The last one's making it across the room. So you talked a lot about a journey where every channel has a role to play. I've worked in I've worked in the industry for quite a while, and I know that not everybody cares about every single channel. Is there any concern that an individual channel needs to pick up the slack of the others that I know my customer won't engage with? Do you tackle that? And how do you, if so?
That's a really good question. I think, as a rule of thumb, we should always be meeting customers where they are. If they aren't hanging out or engaging with a channel, there's no point in sending stuff to that channel. It's a way, I think, if you haven't explored RCS before, it's always worth seeing if you get additional engagement, but the value should always be with the customer and what they're looking for. And I would say don't do stuff for the sake of doing it.
And think, however small your channel mix, making sure you're having the most valuable conversations in that space.
Can I sneak one more in? This is a little more
Please
fun.
do.
We are just starting to dabble in RCS.
Awesome.
Wanted to know what kinds of campaigns you have found to be really effective. The ones we've been playing around with are the one we've played the most with are polls. But are there any other ones that you've kind of really liked, really dug, or is just the existence of it doing good enough right now?
I think the existence of it, the novelty of that verified sender status popping up in the messaging inbox is enough as a means of people going, oh, I'm going to open this and engage with it. Outside of that, we have found that it works really well for guiding users through products. So if there are any complexities, it's super easy. It's super good for easily breaking down steps and then using that two-way conversation to guide them through. So with prompts on what they can do next, just anything to support them moving through the funnel.
Has rich push entered the conversation at all, or is that just fancier push?
So to me, and this is probably a bit controversial, I just view it as fancier push. There are some people out there that probably love it, but I prefer RCS.
Sorry if there's any rich push speakers in
Sorry.
here. I just completely ruined your moment. Anyway, thank you so much for all that.
Thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions? None others? All right. Well, let's give a round of applause for Rebecca and Claire one more time. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening.